The lady who told me I looked great in blue and it was clearly my colour, to this day, if I am deciding between shirts to buy or wear, I'll go with blue. That compliment was about 15 years ago at least. When I was a broke as sin 18-year-old trying to make ends meet, I had a side hustle providing IT support for households, like a Geek Squad sort of thing. In practice, I would mostly set up computers for elderly people and the tech illiterate and teach them how to use them, or get them out of technical binds, usually with printers, by Googling on their behalf. This elderly Korean gentleman hired me to set up his new computer for him. I spent an hour setting it up and teaching him how to use it, and 2 more hours eating a wonderful lunch with the man and his wife. He wouldn't accept my invoice for just the first hour. Instead, he paid me 3 times my hourly rate for all 3 hours and asked me to come back to train him the next week. Over the course of about a month, I came back 4 times, worked with him, had a lovely meal, and he would tell me about his family and his kids. He was so proud of his daughter, who was about to finish her residency and become a pediatrician. By the end of the month, he was pretty comfortable on the PC, and I thanked him profusely for how kind he was and how ridiculously he'd overpaid me. He told me I reminded him of his son, who was estranged for some reason I didn't press, and that he hoped somewhere out there somebody was being kind to his son and sharing a home-cooked meal with him. I don't know why, but more than 10 years later I can't think of that guy without tearing up. I hope everything turned out well for him. My lost wallet was returned in the mail. The anonymous stranger sent it back at their own expense, $9.75 postage, with all the money, credit cards, driver's license, and other items intact. Nothing was missing. A note enclosed read, "Please do something kind for a stranger whenever you have the opportunity. It starts with you. Play your part and I'll play mine. We can make this world bright enough to shine." Yes, indeed, we've all got talents to share with the world. The most satisfying thing in life is helping others, not for personal gain, but for the sake of making the world around you just a little bit better. Took a train to New York City by myself for the first time. I was 18. Second time to New York City, first time ever on a train. I told the kiosk lady that I'd never been on a train before and asked if she might give me a quick rundown of what to do. Another train station employee was nearby and was so interested and amused that I was taking a train for the first time and was alone. He walked me through what to do, down to the smallest detail. No judgment, no meanness. He was just a guy with a silly disposition, delighting in a young person's naivety, breaking up the doldrums of his week. I aspire to be that way when people ask me for help. Thanks, Frank P. You were a peach. When I was a super overweight, I was just starting to work out somewhat regularly. Being morbidly obese at the gym is terrible. I have never felt more eyes on me before in my life. I was on a treadmill, grinding out some inclined walk / light jogging, and a super fit girl got on the machine next to me. This was all pre-COVID. She did a short warm-up, and before she got off the treadmill, she turned to me and gave me a high five and told me to keep it up. It was so encouraging to have that support when I was used to getting stared at by everyone else in the gym. Her small, kind gesture went a long way. I volunteer at a suicide hotline. Some guy, Bob, called in and we started talking about his home situation. Nothing absolutely horrendous, but he felt trapped and stressed and felt like he didn't have options. When people use language like that, our training says we should ask if they are thinking of suicide. Many volunteers have trouble with this, but if you mention suicide to someone who is not suicidal, it doesn't make them more suicidal. They just correct you and say, "No, I feel more like XYZ." So I asked Bob, "You're using a lot of language that people use when they're thinking of suicide. Are you thinking of suicide?" There was a pause, and then a huge wail. I could hear so much pain in his voice. I listened to him cry for at least 5 minutes. I've talked to people who have had suicidal ideation before. It would be better if I were dead, kind of thinking, but with no plan. Bob said yes, he was considering suicide, and we talked it out a bit more. After the pause and wail, that was the most concerned I'd ever been for a human being outside of my family. This wasn't just talking. I felt like he had really already made his mind up about it, which was so scary. I only know what he told me. I know he was in a car park somewhere. I know we got a few short laughs out of each other, and we made some plans for him. Plans are important because it gives you a sense that if he has something to do to plan for, he can't commit suicide. Anyway, he truly is a stranger. I don't know his real name or what he looks like. I just know his story, and I know that he was in immense pain that day. He had a particular kind of accent, and whenever I meet someone with that same accent, I think of him and hope he's okay. There are a few. The biggest one was when I was homeless and asked a lady for the time. She told me and asked if I wanted to share her sandwich and the paper. She was the first person to treat me like a person, like I was worth something in years. I never got her name, but I remember her fondly for the rest of my life. I know that she'll never, ever know what a difference she made in my life. Just that one simple thing she did and the humanity she showed me changed my life. I got sober just a few days later and completely turned my life around. One person, one smile, one kindness that you may never think of again in your life can change someone else's life beyond measure. A translator I met in Iraq. He had worked with the Red Cross through the Balkan Wars of the 90s and had been taken prisoner half a dozen times. The last time, he was beaten so badly that the nerve damage cost him the use of his right arm. It was 90% immobile. After 10 years without the use of his right arm, a surgeon offered to operate on him with the understanding that if he failed, they would just amputate. So he went under the knife, not knowing if he would wake up with a working arm or a stump. After 5 years of physical therapy, learning how to use his arm again, he signed up to work as a translator in the war in Iraq because he saw how many innocent Iraqis were being killed by American forces due to the communications barrier. When I met him, he had been there for 3 years, while his wife and 2 kids were in America. I always try to be a good person, but I know I'll never be as good as that. One day, I was trying to park at the store and a lady was crossing in front of me in the lot. I was waiting patiently and she shot me a dirty look and yelled something like, "What's your problem, asshole?" I proceeded to return the profanities with some FUs and other goodies. I went into the store steaming and proceeded to do my shopping. When I came out, I had all but forgotten about the lady, but as I drove away, there she was. Something came over me and I pulled up to her and I said something like, "I'm sorry for yelling and cursing at you. I don't even know you. Who knows, we could have a lot in common or even be friends." Her face transformed in front of me. It went from twisted up angry to soft and friendly. She apologized immediately and in the most genuine way told me to have a good day. This is the day I really learned positivity and love is really powerful and the type of energy I want in my life. I know I sound like a little softy, but that was a big experience for me and I'm grateful for her. The woman who pulled over in the pouring rain and talked me down off the railing of a bridge over a Florida highway when I was 18. She looked like she had just left a business meeting, but she stayed with me for probably an hour. No umbrella, no raincoat, car still running, listening to me, offering words of encouragement. She truly believed that God had a plan for my life and it wasn't supposed to end that night. She finally convinced me that suicide was a permanent solution to a temporary problem. I'm 51 now. I still haven't figured out what God's plan is for me, but I'm starting to believe she was right.